everyone, it's Shari here, and today we are going to be making this fun Halloween diorama inside of a pumpkin. So I have this craft pumpkin diorama that I found at Michael's, and we're going to be making a little scene inside. So the first thing I want to do, because I want to put lights inside this so that you can light it up and see in it very well, is add the lights, or at least add the hole for the lights to go through. So these are some purple ones that I found at Target in the dollar bins. The ones I'm going to use are actually orange. There's only 10 little lights on there. It was only like $3, and they take 2 AA batteries, I believe. So it's just those really thin wired LED lights. I poked a little hole in the back of my pumpkin. These are just foam, so it's easy to poke a hole in the back. I used my paper piercer to pierce the hole initially, but I needed to make it a little bigger, so I just have a drill bit. I believe this is a 1/8 inch drill bit, and I actually didn't even use the drill. I just twisted it with my fingers, and it went through the foam really easily. So you just need to make sure that the hole is big enough to fit whatever lights you're going to string through here. So I'm just making sure that they string through well. I'm not going to put them in just yet. I'll get to that here a little later. So now I'm going to stamp out all the images I want to use. I thought the little trick-or-treaters would be great. You can see I already have a couple already colored here that I colored for another project and didn't end up using. So I'm going to be using some of those trick-or-treaters from Costume Party. I'm also going to use the house from Happy Haunting and the little ghost and the tombstone that are from the, I think it's Spooktacular set. So I'm just going to fast forward all my stamping and my coloring. So this is going to be super speed stamping and coloring. And I am going to use all these trick-or-treaters here. So I've already got a witch and the pumpkin up there. So I've stamped out the other 3 and I'll color those. I'm stamping out some tombstones and a couple ghosts. I actually don't end up using all these. And I am actually going to use some images that I didn't stamp out on this initial run. Because I stamped some bats from the Spooktacular set and some of the pumpkins from the Costume Party set. So I'm just doing some really easy coloring with some easy shading. Just using a couple greens here for my little kid dressed as a dinosaur. And for whatever reason, I always have to give him purple spikes on his back. I don't know. To me, the dinosaurs are always green and purple. Now for the mummy, I didn't want to leave him just white, so I'm using a very pale brown. It's an E000, and I'm just kind of not coloring the whole piece of the bandage, just highlighting the edges. And I'm going to color his little face and his little hands. And now I'm doing my unicorn. And I'm going to do the same thing with unicorn too, because I want it to be white. So you'll see here when I get to the body that I am going to go around it with a very light gray. I'm giving them all some pink cheeks. So this is a very pale gray, and I'm just outlining it, and then I'll blend it out a little bit with my colorless blender. Looks a little gray right now, but as that colorless blender dries, it'll be white again. Some very easy shading on my tombstones here with 3 different shades of gray. If only I could color this fast all the time. And then I'm going to go in with that really pale gray, just like I did on the unicorn, and blend it out with the colorless blender on the ghost. I also gave them some little rosy cheeks you can see there. Now for the house, I am using 2 purples. I'm using the V12 and the V15. And I'm just blending them together until I get the color that I want. I'm starting with the V12 and then I'll go with the V15. And then I used some V17 on that front porch area because it's even more in the shadow because of that roof over top. And I'm just using various colors of gray for the roof and the front and the chimney. And then here's my pumpkins. So I'm going in with an orange and then a very pale orange for the center. I told you it was super quick coloring. There was a lot to color. And I really wanted to get to the construction and the assembly of this. So I've got a 5-inch foam ball here, and I'm going to cut it in half. And I'm just using a kitchen knife to do this. And just use whatever you have that will cut through it. Just be very careful. And it's a little tall in there, so I'm just going to cut a flat piece on the top so I don't have such a rounded hill. You're not going to really see this at all, so it really doesn't matter what shape it is. And then I'm going to add some hot glue to the bottom of it just to tack it down and hold it in place inside of my pumpkin. You really don't need a lot. And you wouldn't even have to glue it down if you didn't want to, especially if maybe you want to take this out at some point and put like a fall scene inside. So once I've got that down in there, I found this black dyed Spanish moss stuff at Michael's where I found the pumpkin. So it's in kind of the little section where the diorama stuff is. This stuff is really messy. It made my hands really black, but I like the way it looked for the ground. So I'm just kind of covering that styrofoam ball as much as I can. I'm going to use all of it. It wasn't a very big bag, but I want to cover up that ball because it's white. I had also thought about painting that styrofoam ball black so that you didn't see it, but once I got the Spanish moss in there and made it nice and full, you really don't see that ball very much, so it worked out pretty well. And I'm not even attaching that in any way, it's just kind of sitting in there. Once I get all my pieces in there, it will really hold it in. So now I'm adding my lights. So I'm stringing them through that hole I made in the back, which did not get covered up because I made it high enough up to where it didn't get covered up by the styrofoam ball. So that is one thing to remember. So I'm just pulling them all the way through, straight out the front of the pumpkin, and then I'm just going to kind of wad them up and shove them in there. And then here's where you can start to play with them to get them where you want them. You may want to see how it really lights it up in there actually. You may want to just put some around. I kind of made it wrap around in front and then around the opening and then a couple in the back. And I actually used some glue dots. You're going to see here. I wanted this one to kind of be tacked up to the front so it kind of shined back into it. And so I'm just going to use a glue dot and I'm going to put that on the inside of the pumpkin and just press the wire into the glue dot and that will hold it in place. And actually I really like this method because then if you change your mind, it's not permanently stuck in that place, because I did actually fuss with it a little more and move that wire around a little bit more once I got my pieces inside. So now to kind of prep my pieces here, and the secret to this is toothpicks. That's all. That is all you need, some toothpicks and some hot glue. So I'm just going to add some hot glue to a toothpick and lay it on the back of my pieces. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that to all my pieces here. You don't need a whole lot sticking out the bottom because they're just paper. They're not heavy. They're not going to go anywhere. And the ball is not that deep, so you really don't want to, you definitely don't want to have too much of a toothpick. For the little things like the tombstones, I'm actually cutting that toothpick in half, and I'm just going to add that to the back of those as well. But this makes them nice and sturdy, and they stand up really easy. The hot glue dries quickly, you don't see it anyways, and it's not going to seep through and mess up your coloring or your markers or anything like that. So this really works well as a method for sticking these little pieces inside our diorama. Now I had an idea. This is a piece of vellum that's colored with alcohol ink. It's left over from when I did a previous video with the trees and all the vellum was colored. I thought it would make a cool moon. So I'm using the die that cuts out the moon from Happy Haunting, and also am using the little bat that is from the add-on set for the scalloped box die. And I'm just going to add the moon to the back of the chimney so that it looks like it is behind the house. I just thought that might be a cool effect. Now when you see the pictures later, you're going to say, well, that's not very obvious, but I think it's kind of cool because it has sort of a ghosty like glow to it. But the other cool thing is I can put a little glue dot on the one wing of my bat, and make him cross the moon and he looks like he's floating up there. So I really like that effect. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with the house and stick that in there so I can kind of build in front of it. So I'm going to turn on my lights here so you can see. If you get a light right behind that moon, it has a really cool effect because it kind of looks frosty in there. So now you just start playing with it and making your little scene. And I'll be honest, I'd put things in here that I'd pull them out and I'd move them around so that I didn't hide other things behind it. So it's just kind of a playful, fun, creating your scene. And nothing in there is permanent because you just stuck it into foam with a toothpick. So it's no big deal. Now, if you want things to kind of float like the ghosts and the bats, I just have some really thin wire here. You can stick that right down into the foam. It's a little harder because it'll bend. So using the needle nose pliers is actually very helpful. Or, like I'm doing here, I am going to just glue the back of, or glue this wire to the back of the house. So the bat's gonna have that as its support. You can also glue the wire or wrap it around a toothpick and then hide the toothpick down into the foam. So I really wish I had done this before. I put all these pieces in here. I had to take the house out to do it, but it's just stuck in there. It's easy to get back in there because it's just a toothpick, no glue involved. And they are really pretty sturdy in there. And I think those just 10 little lights give off such a good glow, and you can see what's going on in there so well. So I went in with some more glue dots and kind of held some things in place, and I'm just adjusting it here now that I have all my pieces because I just don't want the wire going across any of my pieces. So here is a look at the cool diorama here. You can kind of see the moon a little bit back there. I just think it's a really fun project. So here's a couple still shots. And the house looks like it's glowing even though I didn't cut out the windows. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.